Hey there everybody, Joe here. Thanks for tuning in again. So I'm finally done with that big outer space scene that I was working on finishing last week. And I'm, I'm happy to be done and moving on to something new. So before I dig into anything big again, I promised that I would do a video on painting wildflowers. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to work with these paints. These are my practice paints. When it comes to canvases, I pull out my mural paints to practice with because it's fast. They're water-based, they spread around real fast. So I've got these cans, and I'll run through real quick just because I know that question's going to pop up. This is Sherwin-Williams is the paint store that I got. And you can see that it's got blue in it. This one has a label that's not covered. Duration is this line of paint. They have several different quality levels, I guess. It's acrylic latex interior paint, and so this is definitely not the only thing that'll do the job. It's just something that I like. So you go to the paint store and you just get cans of paint. It's great for practicing and doing quick work. The difference between this and say tubes of paint is that when you get paint in smaller tubes, it usually has a higher percentage of solids that'll preserve your brush texture more like it was when you initially put it on. This shrinks a lot, but it has longevity. I mean, it's great paint and lasts for a long time. So I love to use this for practice. If I'm doing a piece that I really want nice texture to show when it's finished, I might switch to oil base or use acrylic that's in tubes. I've worked with them all. I can assure you that whatever you prefer to work with, the color mixing is the same. The first thing I'm going to do is set up my scene with a horizon and put some flowers going over a hill, maybe put a mountain or something behind it. You know, this could be any distance because the picture could be at any distance. I might be looking at it from 20 feet away, 40 feet away, whatever it is right here at the bottom. When I go halfway to this horizon, now I know I made this curved, but we're just approximating. So if I go halfway, I want to make sure that whatever is right here is half of the size of whatever is right here. So if I have a flower right here, then I want to be sure that that flower is half the width, half the height. So truly it's 1/4 of you know, the surface area, I guess. But you know, it's only going to be like this big right here. And that makes sense because, you know, if you just do a triangle to a vanishing point, you know, then it's going to be something like this. And if you cut a triangle in half, it's half of the width right there. It just makes sense. Very simple, right? Well, every time I cut this in half, the distance doubles again. So let's say that this is 10 feet. This flower is at 10 feet away. That's where my picture starts. So then I need to be mindful that this is 20 feet right here. So let's put a 20 right there. And then right here, we cut it in half to the horizon again. Well, it didn't go up another 10, now it's gone up another 20, now we're at 40 feet. I cut it in half again, now look how little that changes, yet it goes up to 80 feet. So every time I cut this in half, it doubles. So I know that if I squeeze, now this is where it's really helpful because if I'm putting, you know, 1 flower, 2, 3, 4, I've got 4 flowers in this span of 10 feet. Well, then I need to be sure that up in this span that's just really skinny right here, that I'm trying to cram 8 times what this was. Because this is 80 to 160, right? 160. So if I'm up in this little span right here, then I'm actually trying to cram 1, 2, 3, 4 times 8. Which is 32, right? So I want to have, I'm not literally going to do that, but in this little space right here, I need to just really cram tiny shapes together, understanding that that's how many would be in there if I was actually doing the math. I'm not saying this because you have to do the math. It just gives you a really good point of reference. Every time you cut the distance to the horizon in half, your total distance, you know, from your eyes doubles. And so then you can understand that whenever your distance doubles, the size of something is half of what it was. And then you can understand just how many, you know, if this was, You know, if this was railroad ties, for instance, same thing. I've got 4 here. I'm going to have to put 32 of those little buggers in there. So I can tell you right away that typically the value, meaning the lightness or darkness of a flower, is very similar to the greens, the grass that it's surrounded by. So if you go a whole lot lighter or a whole lot darker trying to shadow those objects than what you have represented in the green grass that's around it, it's going to look off. It may not look like what people are used to seeing and might look unnatural. So I want to make sure that I make this grass, or whatever kind of weeds this is, dark enough that I can do like a red in there, red flowers, and not have it be so much darker than the green that it's surrounded by. So you can see, this is just my style. This isn't how this has to be done. It's just my style. I like to use all of these short up and down strokes. Vertical strokes is the word I'm looking for. Let's cover up that black line. So, just like those lines that I drew at the beginning are telling me, I am representing a lot of distance with every stroke of the brush when I'm this close to the horizon. Now the horizon may not be necessarily where, you know, an object ends. You know, a horizon sometimes is theoretical, because you're just talking about if a straight line kept going forever, where would it stop changing location? You know, so the horizon might be up here somewhere, and this might just be a hill that's rolling. But nevertheless, this just gives me a good gauge. It doesn't have to be exact. All right, now I want to make sure that I'm not creating a lot of shapes that are extending far down or far up. I want to keep everything very squished and horizontal. So even though I'm using these vertical strokes, I'm moving my brush in horizontal paths to make sure that, you know, I have a string of shapes that's just real squished and stretched out this way. Now I'm going to put some black in there. Those are my brightest colors. That's where in the background you see just the tips of the leaves and the grass blades. You see the tops of it. You can't see down into the shadows when you're looking across the surface. But as it would get closer to my feet, I would see more and more of the shadows that are beneath that. And you can see that it's an exponential change. You know, because up in here I said, I got to squeeze 32 objects in that little space. You know, it gets dramatically less squished with every inch down on my picture I go. So it's not just kind of a linear change. Exponential change. Okay. So I'm just going across this and continuing to work this, but there's purpose behind my working. I'm looking for anything that looks like it's going too much up or down, and just really trying to keep things either blended and continuous or in horizontal shapes. So anything that looks like, you know, it's creating, and it looks good now. I mean, this to me is definitely going to work. But that's what I'm doing. I'm not just randomly mixing the colors together or trying to get a perfect blend. A lot of the time, as I go across the surface and I continue to work the paint, I'm getting rid of what I don't want to see, rather than trying to add what I do want to see with these brush strokes. You know, for instance, here I've just applied this paint. I can immediately see, you know, there's this big fat stroke here that meets this yellow. That doesn't look like what I'm trying to make, so I go right in between it. And so I just very quickly go across and obscure all of the edges where one shape is meeting another, and it's creating something other than what I want to see. So a lot of times I'm just getting rid of things by brushing across the transition. The transition meaning where one color, one shape meets another. That's how I do gradients. You know, if I want to blend the blue and the green, for instance, you know, or the blue and the yellow. I've got yellow there. I have blue here. Well, I'm gonna work the transition. I'm not gonna work the whole thing, you know. And this is something that I really have to address a lot. Something I explain a lot is that, you know, when I'm doing a gradient, I don't just go like this. No, I work the area that's in between the two colors. You know, I apply it first. You apply it here, okay, and then you apply it here, and then you work the middle, and then you gradually work out from the middle. And sometimes I have to clean my brush. But that's getting off subject. We're making horizontal lines here. Let's stay with that. Now notice I didn't add any white to this. The yellow is light enough, so I didn't need to add any white. Now I might add white in another picture if I wanted it to look like really sunlit. I might add white to this up here and make it pop out. But since I know I want to put colorful flowers in here, if I brighten this with white, those colors are just going to be too dark. There is no color of pigment that's as bright as white. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some fluorescent colors out there that are, you know, maybe actually as bright as white. That seems possible. Okay, I'm adding a little more black. I just want to have more and more black as I get further down in this picture. Here I'm just, you know, where I have too much black here, not enough here, I just go back and forth. Touch one, then the other, and it balances them out. Distributes the colors. I don't want to have them completely mixed. I mean, I do like the way that looks to have some shadows and some light colors. I'm not going for detail in this picture. I'm just going for believability. Even a blurry picture can still look like a nice picture, as long as there's nothing in there that's saying, this is wrong, this doesn't line up. Now notice that I'm not scrunching things anymore into those horizontal patterns. As I get lower in the picture, I'll get a little bit more loose with my squishing and restricting them to just those flattened horizontal shapes. I'm a little higher right here. It's good to always be conscious of how close you are to the horizon. Not exactly, I just mean conscious of when you're getting closer, getting further. You know, as you get closer, you want to squish your shapes more. As you get further, you can open up and make things a little more scattered. Alright, let's load some paint on here. I'm getting impatient. Let's put yellow and put some blue and put some black down here. You know, whatever color flowers I want to do. I'm going to start with some red. Alright, so just pure red, and I'm going to put some in the shadows. So this has started to tack up and it's kind of dry, so let's just see where I'm at with color. Now do you see how these little red dots are significantly darker than this bright yellow grass? So that's a problem. I don't want that. There's a way to change that by just putting a layer of white down first and then putting red, a transparent layer over it. But I'm going to see if I can just put some red flowers in the shadows since this color is dark. So I'll start by just going to the darker areas. I'm going to stay off of my bright yellow areas. And as I get down here, I'm going to put bigger shapes. I am not painting a single petal in this picture at this point because I'm just trying to get colors that are going to give me the feel of a field full of flowers. I just want to deal with the main problems that seem to be common, where you're painting flowers and they just don't look like the sun is hitting them and lighting them up. They don't look natural. And that's not because you got the shape wrong. It's something that has to do with the color relationships. Not that getting the shape right isn't valuable and doesn't have its part, but usually when a painting just looks real unnatural, I think it comes down to either the perspective or the color relationships. Okay, so I'm putting red all over my dark areas, knowing that it's a dark red. This is going to have to be a shadow color. Now it can be tricky trying to be mindful of the perspective. So I just want to keep reminding you that when I'm in here, I'm scattering my strokes, just looking for those dark areas. But since I did the grass first, it kind of gives me a template. I'm following my dark shadows and putting dabs of this in there. And it just so happens that those dark areas are a little bit more squished into horizontal shapes here. But see, I just want to be careful not to make any lines. Like if I do a path of dots like I did here, up here, that's not going to look good. It's going to create, this line that covers who knows how many, how much distance. And just look like an unnatural connection of shapes. So I want to make sure that I travel kind of, more horizontally as I'm up in here. Alright, now I'm not going to have as much shadows showing in these areas because, for the same reason I didn't add as much black up there. So I won't even go all the way to the top of the picture. I'll wait till I have a lighter color to do that. There, it already looks like a field of red flowers. I didn't even do much. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is get a lighter color of red. And I don't think I want to do the process of doing white and then layering the red over it. I'm going to try to steer away from that. So I'm going to mix white with the red, which is going to kill my color a little bit. But if I add a little bit of yellow along with it, it will help. So whenever I lighten a color, because of the way sun affects the colors of things, it tends to bend colors a little bit toward the yellow when sunlight shines on something. So I find that just a little bit goes a long way, a little bit of yellow with my white mix. So I'll just mix it up here. I'm going to cover it up later. I've got white and yellow in there. I'll put mostly white, a little bit of yellow. I don't want to put a lot of yellow because that would create an effect of translucency that I don't want just yet. I'm just trying to get a light red. Now you see how that, when I lighten that red, it just gets this almost like a magenta, like a little bit on the violet pink side, so the yellow helps it to look like, more like a lighter version of what would be on a red flower. It's a tricky thing since I'm killing the color by adding white. I'll add a little more red to it. You can see the comparison to the original red there. I want to get as close to the original red as possible because I want that color. Alright, now that's not too bad. It still looks a little bit darker. But I think it'll be okay. Let's add a little bit of red and yellow. Yeah, I don't like that. Okay, I'm going to have to do what I didn't want to do. If I would have made this grass darker, I would have been able to just mix this color. But I'm going to have to resort to layering now. Because I just can't get that to be light enough and red enough. And now I've demonstrated a common problem, is that there isn't often a paint color available to get the intensity that you need. So this is a solution that I've used on multiple occasions. And so I'm going to do that now. Pure white. And I'm going to put that where I was going to put my red flowers. And so I'm going to work in I don't even need to paint individual flowers. I just need patches of red. And I need it to be in shapes that are pretty horizontal. I don't want to have any shapes that are really stretching far up and down. Exactly like when I started with the grass. Keep my perspective in line here. Maybe that's about as far down as it would go, where I'm just really keeping things squished. And then I can maybe stretch out those shapes a little bit as I get lower in the picture. Just Put some white in here. Let's put white, some white wherever I put the red. Just put little spots of it. And wherever I have the lighter areas meaning the lighter grass color. If I want to put red flowers somewhere where there's the lighter color of grass, I'm going to put pure white. I could also use a yellowish white, that would work good too, because I'm going to layer red over it to get my bright color. I might put a few dots on these like they're just peeking up into the light. Looks weird now, but when I add the red, you'll see it's a cool effect. And it's okay if it mixes with that red. I mean, here's a little bit of red. I know that I'm going to be layering red over it, so it's no big deal if it also mixes a little bit with red. But I just need it to be a nice, bright base coat. Now red is, I think the darkest, if you want a real bright red, a real intense red, it usually is pretty dark. And so you always run into this problem with flowers. And so like I said, I think that the best solution if you want to just enjoy your painting and paint like normal, not have to have some fandangled trick to get it to be bright enough. I mean, it's fun having tricks, but it's nice if you can just enjoy your normal process. I recommend just making the grass dark enough that this red is not so dark in comparison. That's a lot of paintings are very dark in their overall color, because you can always shine a bright light on that painting to get it to be brighter. So using true bold colors that aren't mixed with white can be a valuable thing because of that. You can see down here some of my reds are bright in comparison to the green. Like this is a nice balance here, where some of these reds are heavy enough. Wherever the reds are kind of transparent, a transparent red over the top of green, they cancel each other out and you end up with a dark result. But if I do another layer on some of these, it'll be lighter just because it's actually covering the green instead of letting the green show through and giving a canceled result. Canceled meaning it's very hard to see the color green through a red lens. It's very hard to see the color blue through a red lens. They end up being very dark colors. Very close to black. That's kind of the principle behind those 3D glasses with the red and the blue lens. The left eye doesn't see what the right eye sees because they have the red and the blue. See, so where the red is closer in value to the green, it looks more like a flower. And you can see that already showing. I have the red on my brush, I'm just kind of going through and touching it to some of the white, letting it mix and create some intermediate tones between the red and the white, so maybe it'll look like some of those flowers are transitioning out of the shadow and into the light. Who even knows what kind of flowers these are? Let's see how dry we are up here. Yeah, it's pretty dry. So now I've got a wet brush. I always start with a brush that has water in it. And I was just dabbing it in my little water bucket over here. I'll grab a little bit of red. It's not soaked, it just has, it's just wet bristles. And so I'm going to try to put it just over the top, and I'm going to try to do it thin so that you can see right through it. Okay, just over the top of my white areas. And it's okay if I get a little bit off. This is how I get my brightest possible red, is by just backlighting it with white paint. But it's, I don't recommend this technique if you're trying to do detail work. It's hard, it's tedious because wherever it overlaps, you can really see that it overlapped. I'm telling you right now, it's not the most ideal. It's just a way to get that bright red color. It is kind of fun though for making a color really pop out in a picture. A lot of that white is still wet, so it's not layering, it's mixing. So I gotta wait to go over some of those little blobs that I put on the canvas. I'll stay up here where it's dry. So you can see where it gets on the green, it leaves a little bit of a darker color. And so that to me kind of just looks like a little bit of color that's in the shadows. It's okay if there's a little bit of that. You can kind of see here, if I converted this to black and white, this would not have an extreme value difference from the green that's around it. Now I'm curious if I could make a blue that's bright enough. Let's see. Let's see if we can make a bright and a shadow version of kind of a blue-violet also. So magenta and blue. Now here's the color I didn't show you at the beginning. Same brand of paint, just in a quart. It's magenta. And you might as well be painting with Kool-Aid as far as coverage. You can see right through that paint. You have to do like 20 coats of it before it covers on its own, but it's great for mixing with other colors. So I want to get a good violet. Blue violet. I want a blue violet. So that's going to look pretty blue in there. Let's have a little more. And add a good amount of white. And this is going to be, I have the feeling, just real gray looking. Yeah, so we're going to have to do the same trick with white, but this will be a good shadow color. I'll use that for the shadow. Maybe a little more of that, and yeah, it's real similar in value to the shadows. So this is a good place to put it. It always has very similar value to the grass that's around it. Let's put a little more of the color in there. Purple and yellow look so nice together. You know, it's just a blue, violet, and a yellow. I love those colors next to each other. Alright, now we need more white because I've got to put white under that color in order to get it to show. So let's take a little bit of white and put it on the tips of these violet areas. I think there are, you know, a million really good tutorials out there about, you know, painting one particular type of flower and how to get the shape right. And color, I think, is the most troublesome issue, is getting the color to look right within your painting. So that's why I'm making this one all about that. Let's do some little strips of that violet color in here. This is white, but I mean, I'm going to put the violet on there. Since it looks good next to the yellow, let's put it in there. Put it in the air. I always get all tongue-tied. See, that kind of goes down suddenly, so I want to watch my shapes. Alright, let's try the violet. Now, rinse out my brush. And let's go for this magenta and blue. And I want it to be more blue than violet. You know, you see what an extremely dark color that is, so I will lighten it a little bit with white. But not too much. I'm just going to try to go real thin with it in order to achieve my desired color. Now these in here, a little bit on the dark side as they've dried, you know, where the green is kind of layered over the top, or the red is kind of layered over the top of the green. Make that dark color. So I might choose to add you know, some of that lighter red in there too. Let me see what happens if I add a little bit of this yellow, make it a little bit more orange. See, with flowers, dark shadows are kind of your enemy. You don't want high contrast between your highlights and your shadows. You want everything to be real low contrast and real high color. So I can't have these real dark colors in here and keep my light, you know, light fluffy petal look that you get when the sun lights up those translucent petals. That, you know, you lose that look when you get your shadows too dark in comparison with everything else. So even if I have to change the color of these and make them more orange in order to get that color lighter, it's worth doing to make it look more like flowers. and less like just dark objects that are in there. Maybe I'll just have to change these to yellow or orange flowers in order to get them there. I have a red flower, and let's just say that there's this poppy kind of a flower. And so I'm going to break this down to how the light's hitting it, so that it gives a little bit more of a clear understanding here. So let's say that the light is coming a little bit from the left here and shining down on this side. Well, I'm going to lighten this. This is a bowl shape, okay? I'm deciding I'm going to make this kind of a bowl shape. All right, so let's take a little bit of white and yellow, see if we can make a lighter color where the light is striking this side of it. Now let's get the red. All right, so this is where the light's hitting, and I put too much of that light color. Let's get a bunch of this red. Now, notice that I'm not using black on the shaded side. So I'm just going to put a gradient right here that goes from the dark to the light. So see, it gradually goes to that lighter color. And it even kind of looks like some petals overlapping. But notice the very low contrast between these. You know, these subtle little lines that are created. I just kind of made them by accident there. But that ends up looking a lot like a flower because of the high amount of color that's in the shadows and the low amount of contrast. Low contrast, high color. You want colorful shadows that are not too dark. And so now I've got the inside of the flower, so maybe there's edge on here. So again, if I've got the sun that's blasting through these petals, then that's going to create a very colorful underside. So I'm putting the underside of a petal right now. Right here, so a petal that's kind of coming out this way, and this is the underside of it. I'm using red for it, and I can use a little bit of black to do shadows, but you need to go real easy on that in order to not make it look like this flower is now a chunk of some non-translucent material. I'm not going to use black in this one because my red is already very dark in comparison to the other colors that are in there. Alright, so then maybe a little bit more petal going that way, and maybe there's a little bit of white catching the edge. So now I've got a shadow that's highly saturated with color, and then I've got a light area right here. And so now I might put a little bit of reflection on here that in reality might be a real bright red, maybe not. But since I can't get any brighter, I'm just going to add a little bit of white just to be the edge of the petals, maybe. Just hanging over here. And it kind of showed through that green layer is showing through a little bit. Right there, we got a petal there, and maybe I can even put a little bit of white in here too. Now, since you need so much color in your shadows when you're doing flowers, it often makes you unable to have as much color in your bright colors, but it's worth the sacrifice. You don't want to make your shadows have no color, because then you lose the effect of the translucent petals. So it's better to lose the color in your bright areas than to lose the color in your dark areas. Like that. See, I just kind of brighten that area up. And then wherever you have light shining through, you have your translucency rule, where if light is shining through this red petal, it's going to shift the hue toward yellow. So that means red gets more orange. It doesn't mean that the red turns to yellow. So down here, let's say I have two petals overlapping Well, I'm just going to put yellow right here where this red is, and I'm going to make sure that I have enough red that it still stays darker than the other colors. I have yellow there. Then I'll put a little bit of that yellower color here too. This way. And the goal is to make it look like there's a petal here and a petal here, and where they're crossing there's a darker, more red triangle left in the middle where they intersect. Maybe I can do a better job with another flower. But you can see just how much I'm working with very low contrast. I don't have very much difference to work with here. Right? So all of these colors back in here are based on this understanding of what kind of colors I want in here. But here I'm not bothering with putting them in the right places and shapes. But I just know what colors not to put in there. I'm keeping the contrast low and the colors saturated and close to the value of the grass. Those are the rules that I want to follow if I want these flowers to look like they're not out of place. Alright, so we've got a shadow inside of this, right? And so where yellow gets darker, I want to also make it, if things move toward yellow and then to white as they get brighter, then the shadow, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to make the shadow a little more red on this yellow. And then here, let's go put some yellow right there. And then I'll even put a little bit of white for that kind of reflective highlight right in there. Now there's a reason that looks like they're overlapping, because I went more violet as I moved away from that blue. That blue is a little more on the greenish turquoise. So as an object gets brighter and the sun is lighting it up, translucency is when the light goes into it and then comes out and is filtered, so it colors the light like sun shining through a big wave. Well, so there's an order to those colors. As it lightens something, it moves toward yellow. So a blue goes to a greener blue toward the yellow. So blue goes to green, green goes to yellow, and then to white. And sometimes a violet blue will light up and be more of a true blue, and then be more of a green blue. And so it doesn't always just go to yellow, it just goes toward it. Well, you do the same thing going backwards. If I'm making a shadow, and I'm on this green side, I'm on the blue side of the yellow, not going toward the red. Well, so then going darker, the blue gets more violet. So here I am adding the magenta to it. Now if I went, in the direction of yellow, green, blue, if I went in the direction of yellow, orange, red, it's a different order, So the violet turns more red, the red turns more orange, the orange turns more yellow. And then a bluer violet can turn blue. A blue turns more green, green turns more yellow. And so whether you're going forward or backward. So here I am making these overlaps with this shadow color where I just followed that order of color change. So white. If white gets darker, remember how I said you could go backwards? Well, with the change of hue on the shadow or the highlight color. Well, so as something gets brighter, it moves toward yellow as the sun shines through. So if it's white, as it gets darker, we're going backward. Well, white moves toward yellow as you get darker, because that order, as something changed colors, always ends on the yellow to the white. Well, so then white to the yellow if you're going backwards. So a white flower in here, let's just do a quick little white lily looking thing like this here. Okay, so if I want to shadow that, then I'm going to get my black. The black is just going to look really gray and wrong for a flower. Okay, that's black. But now watch what happens when I put yellow in there. It's going to get real green, which also looks weird. Let's put a tiny bit of yellow, not a lot of yellow. Now, I need to redo a lot of my white because that blue is coming through. So let's go right here with that one. Let's go here with this one. That little bit of yellow in there makes all the difference with shadowing white. But notice how light of a shadow it is. And let's put a little bit of that same shadow right here. Make this petal look like it's curling under a little bit. And this one, see if I want to put the underside of this petal here, watch. Little bit of yellow with the black. And let's go green, let's go blue. I'm just going to touch up some of the green around here. Let's do some details on the screen now. Alright, so we got these flowers, they need some little stems or something. Alright, so what would they have? I'm just going to paint the negative space, I think that'll be easier. And put black shadow coming up on each side of where the stem would be. See if this works. And then let's get a little bit more of this yellow and maybe add a little bit of white. Let's try to stay with the abstract feel here. Add some little white reflections that might be leaves. Let's do something fun in there, like some purpley looking mountains. That would be nice. You always want to be careful not to make your atmospheric effects go, or your shadows go with the shape of the hill. It's, you know, I'm keeping these going straight across. Let's put a tiny bit of blue in there. Okay, I'm looking at comments from last week's post, which was my finale video finishing up my outer space scene. Black and White says, I'm always excited to watch your videos. I've always wanted to paint, but only got the encouragement after seeing your videos. Well, thank you for that encouraging report. You know, I couldn't wish for anything better but to be an encouragement to you. Hasi says, woo, honestly, sell that and retire. That's a nice compliment. I don't think I could sell it for enough to retire. I wish I could. Hey, maybe I could. I don't know. I'll put it on Etsy. The stencil is perfect for those of us with shaky hands, says Kathleen. Very good. I definitely have shaky hands, and I found that I was. So in that last video, I showed how I use a stencil to get all of the 6-pointed twinkle shapes to the stars. I've got another video, how to paint stars with twinkles, where I just use my hand and just pull out the twinkles in the direction I wanted to go. But I noticed that it was just difficult for me when I was doing a whole bunch close to each other to keep those lines parallel with each other, so they all were kind of offset and looking funny if I did a bunch of them. And so I ended up with a lot of redos. So that stencil is a good alternative to be more accurate. You know, I really got accurate with that with the lines that I drew. You can check out that video to see what I'm talking about. Larry D giving some more encouraging report here, saying, you give me the courage to attempt painting because you said in a previous video that your hands shake. Mine are much like yours. Like I said, you know, I can't wish for anything better, but to be a source of encouragement, that makes me really happy. Thank you, Maya, for the very nice compliment as well. Soltrim MS Spray Paint Art says, excellent. Thank you very much for that nice compliment. I'm going to see what your channel looks like here. Definitely some cool spray paint art. David Kewen, thank you again for the nice compliment, David. Thank you, Isabel Quinn, for the flattering compliment. You are so fantastically awesome. That's great for the ego, thanks. And thank you to the rest of you, many other very nice compliments on here. I'm always very grateful for that. I want to let you know about an art contest coming up that came to my email inbox. The city of Gothenburg, Sweden, is hosting this art contest where if your work is chosen, then they fly you to Gothenburg, which I think is super cool, and you get to have your work painted on this, I don't know how many kilometers long stretch that goes all through the city. You can see more information about that by the link in the description. And so if you're interested in a cool art competition, I mean, I think that sounds like a good one. And the purpose of that competition, I think, is also really good, to employ young people, young talent, through painting. You know, if I hear about any other things like this, you know, I want to help spread the word. I love hearing about opportunities that are out there. If you don't already know, you can support Mural Joe on Patreon, and I put some bonus videos on there for the people who choose to pledge. We're not after huge pledges, $1 a month. So if you choose to do that, great. If you don't, then I appreciate your views here on YouTube, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.